r/NoSleep. Every night at 3:15 a.m., the lights in my town flicker. I finally found out why. You know the kind of town where nothing ever really happens? The kind with one grocery store, a diner where the coffee tastes like burnt tar, and streets that roll up by 8 p.m. That's my hometown, Ridgeway. A place so quiet it feels like the air itself forgets to move sometimes. But there's one thing about Ridgeway that isn't so normal. Every night, without fail, at exactly 3:15 a.m., the lights in town flicker. It's not just a quick, harmless glitch. It's every light, street lamps, porch lights, even flashlights and phone screens. They flicker in perfect sync, a rhythmic pulse like the town is breathing. 3 flickers. Then darkness. For exactly 11 minutes. Everyone in town knows the rule: stay inside, stay silent, and never look outside. I grew up with that rule. It was like bedtime or brushing your teeth, just something you did without asking why. My parents never explained, and when I'd ask, they'd go stiff, their faces pale like I'd cursed in church. Because it's safer that way, was all my dad ever said. But I was always curious. Curiosity's a dangerous thing here. It wasn't until I turned 17 that I broke the rule. It was a dare, really. My best friend, Mark, thought he was invincible, the kind of kid who skateboarded off rooftops just to see if he could stick the landing. "Let's find out what's out there," he whispered one night, his grin sharp in the glow of a stolen flashlight. 3:14 a.m. We sat on his porch, huddled in hoodies, our breath misting in the cold. The town was dead silent. Then, right on time, the flicker. 3 pulses. Off. On. Off. Then total darkness. Mark stood up. "Come on," he whispered. I hesitated, heart pounding in my chest. But I followed. We crept down the street, flashlights off, relying on the faint glow of the moon. The darkness felt heavy, pressing against my skin like invisible hands. Then we heard it. A clicking sound, faint but distinct. Like bones tapping together. Mark froze. "What the hell is that?" he whispered. I didn't answer. Because that's when we saw it. At the far end of the street, something was moving. It wasn't walking. It was gliding, smooth and unnatural, like it wasn't touching the ground at all. Its shape was wrong, too tall, too thin, its limbs bending at angles that made my stomach twist. And it was heading straight for us. Mark grabbed my arm. "Run." We sprinted, our footsteps pounding against the pavement. I didn't dare look back, but I could hear it, the clicking, getting louder, faster, closer. We made it back to his house just as the lights flickered back on. When I finally looked behind me, there was nothing there. But Mark was gone. The police said he'd run away. His parents put up flyers. But no one really looked for him, not seriously. Because deep down, everyone in Ridgeway knows the truth. Mark broke the rule. And it took him. I tried to forget. Tried to move on. But last week, something changed. I was lying in bed when the lights flickered. 3 pulses. Then darkness. But this time, something was different. I heard it inside my house. That same clicking sound, coming from the hallway. I held my breath, pulling the blanket over my head like a child. I could hear it moving closer, slow and deliberate. The floorboards creaked under its weight, or maybe it wasn't even touching the floor. Then I heard my name. Whispered in a voice that sounded like Mark's. "Help me." I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I waited until the lights flickered back on. When I finally got the courage to look, the house was empty. Except for one thing. On the floor outside my bedroom door was Mark's hoodie. The one he wore the night he disappeared. I should have left Ridgeway. I should have packed a bag and driven until the town was nothing but a speck in the rearview mirror. But I didn't. Because I needed to know. So last night, I broke the rule again. I set up cameras, one on the porch, one in the hallway, one outside pointed at the street. I wanted proof. At 3:15 a.m., the lights flickered. 3 pulses. Then darkness. I stayed hidden in my room, clutching a baseball bat like it could protect me. The cameras were set to night vision, feeding live footage to my laptop. At first, nothing. Just static. Then I saw it. On the porch camera, a figure. Mark. Or something that looked like Mark. His face was wrong. Stretched. His eyes too wide, too dark, like bottomless pits. He stood there, staring directly into the camera. Then he smiled. And that's when I saw the other thing. Behind him. A shape, tall and thin, its limbs twisting and bending like broken branches. Its head tilted unnaturally, clicking sounds echoing through the speakers. It leaned down, its face next to Mark's, staring into the camera. And it spoke. "Now you see. I don't know what it is. I don't know where Mark really went. But I do know this. The lights in Ridgeway don't flicker because of faulty wiring. They flicker because it's hunting. And now it knows I'm watching. Now it knows I know. If you ever find yourself in Ridgeway, remember the rule. Stay inside. Stay silent. Never look outside. Because it's always there. Waiting." That word echoed in my head, like a whisper buried beneath layers of static. I stared at the laptop screen long after the video feed cut to black, the cursor blinking in rhythmic defiance against the darkness. The room felt colder, like the walls themselves had absorbed that one, singular word. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I tried to act normal. I went to work at the gas station, restocked shelves, and pretended not to feel the invisible weight pressing down on me. But every shadow seemed to move differently, every flickering light bulb hummed with an unnatural frequency. I could feel it everywhere, in the corners of my vision, in the spaces where silence lingered too long. That night, I decided to watch the footage again. I fast-forwarded to 3:15 a.m. The lights flickered. 3 pulses. Then darkness. There was Mark, standing on my porch, his smile stretched too wide, his eyes empty. But this time, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. In the window behind him was me. My reflection, except it wasn't a reflection. The angle was wrong. The figure moved slightly, its head tilting in perfect sync with Mark's twisted grin. It was like it was watching me, watching myself from the outside. A distorted echo of who I was. I slammed the laptop shut, my heart racing. This wasn't just about the lights. It wasn't just about the flickering or the disappearing people. It was inside. The next day, I drove to the edge of Ridgeway, desperate to leave, to escape whatever was hunting me. But when I crossed the town's old wooden bridge, something strange happened. My car stalled. The engine died, even though the tank was full and everything had been fine just minutes before. I tried the ignition over and over, but nothing happened. Then, I noticed the road ahead. It was gone. Not blocked. Not covered. Gone. A vast emptiness stretched out where the road should have been, like the world had simply forgotten to exist beyond Ridgeway. I stepped out of the car, the air thick and electric, my skin prickling with invisible static. I heard it again. Click. 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 The same sound from that night. From the footage. From my hallway. I spun around, expecting to see it, the tall, broken thing. But there was nothing. Just the woods, the bridge, and my car, now covered in a thin layer of frost that hadn't been there seconds before. I got back inside and locked the doors, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The clock on the dashboard blinked 3:15 a.m. The lights in my car flickered. 3 pulses. Then darkness. I woke up in my bed. At first, I thought it was a dream. But the frostbite scars on my fingertips said otherwise. I needed answers. I couldn't run, not anymore. So, I did the only thing left to do. I went to the library. Ridgeway's library was ancient, older than most of the buildings in town. The walls smelled of mildew and forgotten secrets. I asked the old librarian if there were any town records, old newspapers, anything that might explain what was happening. She didn't answer. She just stared at me with cloudy eyes and whispered, "You shouldn't be asking." But I was done with being afraid. I found a dusty archive in the basement, stacks of yellowed papers and brittle books. Hours passed as I dug through them until I stumbled upon a faded journal, its cover cracked with age. It belonged to a man named Thomas Granger, dated 1893. His entries spoke of strange occurrences, lights flickering, people vanishing, and whispers in the dark. He described the same clicking sounds, the same distorted figures. But what chilled me was one sentence, scrawled in shaking handwriting. "It doesn't hunt the town. It hunts the people who see it." I dropped the journal, my hands trembling. That's why no one talks about it. That's why everyone pretends it isn't real. Because acknowledgement is an invitation. When I got home, my front door was ajar. I knew I hadn't left it that way. I stepped inside slowly, the floorboards creaking under my weight. The house was dark, but not the comforting kind. This darkness felt alive. I heard the clicking again, coming from my bedroom. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open. There, standing in the middle of my room, was Mark. His skin was gray, stretched too tightly over his bones. His eyes were hollow, black pits that seemed to pull at the edges of reality. Behind him, in the shadows, something shifted, the thing that had taken him. I should have run. I should have screamed. But I couldn't. My body wouldn't listen. Mark stepped closer, his mouth opening unnaturally wide, the corners of his lips staring slightly as he spoke in a voice that wasn't his. "Now you belong." Everything went black. I woke up again. Not in my bed this time, but in the middle of Ridgeway's main street. It was 3:15 a.m. The lights flickered. 3 pulses. Then darkness. But I wasn't afraid anymore. Because I understood. I was part of it now. If you ever come to Ridgeway, remember the rules. Stay inside. Stay silent. Never look outside. But it won't save you if you've already seen it. Because once it knows you, you belong.